First Contact's fatal mistake. The Krylonian Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds through perfect understanding. Their mastery of psychospace, the quantum realm where consciousness itself resided, had made them invincible. They didn't need warships or armies. They simply reached into the collective consciousness of a species and adjusted it. Resistance became mathematically impossible when you could rewrite the very concept of defiance. That was before they found Earth. High Commander 6 stood before the Psychometric Council, her crystalline form refracting the pale blue light of the chamber. "The human mind is wrong," she reported, her harmonic voice wavering with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "Their consciousness doesn't follow any pattern we've ever encountered." The Council's 9 members shifted, their faceted bodies creating a kaleidoscope of worried light. "Explain," the first speaker commanded. "They're fractured," 6 continued. "Not just as a species, but as individuals. Each human mind contains multiple competing narrative structures, contradictory belief systems, and layered identities. When we attempt to impose psychometric control, the signal simply scatters." The council chamber fell silent. In 10,000 years of Krylonian expansion, this had never happened. Their psychospace manipulation had subjugated the militant Vex, tamed the hive mind of the Zerkath, even broken the silicon consciousness of the machine collective. But humanity's minds were proving impossible to grip. "Show us," the first speaker demanded. 6 activated the psychometric display. The chamber filled with a 3-dimensional representation of a human mind. A chaotic storm of neural patterns, emotional currents, and conflicting thoughts. Unlike the elegant crystalline structures of other species' consciousness, this was a tempest of contradictions. "They can believe in multiple contradictory things simultaneously," 6 explained. "They can know something is false yet choose to believe it. They can hate and love the same thing, fear and desire it. Their consciousness isn't a unified stream. It's a battlefield of competing narratives." The council watched as 6 demonstrated their attempted psychometric control. In any other species, the Krylonian influence would flow through the consciousness like dye in water, tinting every thought and belief. But in the human mind, the control fractured, split, and was absorbed into the chaos of their existing mental contradictions. "Worse," 6 continued, "they're adaptive. Each failed attempt teaches their minds new ways to resist. They don't even realize they're doing it. Their psychological immune system is unlike anything we've encountered." The first speaker's crystalline form darkened with concern. "Can we not simply destroy them? Surely they're primitive technology." "That's the other problem," 6 interrupted, breaking protocol in her urgency. "They've noticed us. Our psychometric attempts, while unsuccessful, have been detected. Not by their instruments, but by what they call intuition, another chaos function of their consciousness we don't understand. They're preparing for us, and they're excited." She projected another image, a stream of human communications intercepted in the days since their failed psychometric assault. The council watched in growing horror as humans across their world eagerly shared their observations of possible alien influence. Instead of fear, they showed enthusiasm. Instead of unity, they spawned 1,000 different theories and responses. "They're not just resistant to psychometric control," 6 concluded. "They're immune to the very concept of absolute consensus. Every attempt to unify their consciousness creates more diversity of thought. They don't break under psychological pressure. They become more complex." The council chamber erupted in harmonic discord as the members argued. The Krylonian Empire had built its power on the assumption that consciousness followed universal laws. That thought could be mathematically predicted and controlled. Humanity's existence challenged their most fundamental beliefs. "We must act decisively," the first speaker finally declared. "If we cannot control them, we must destroy them before they spread their cognitive contamination to other species." 6's crystalline form pulsed with warning harmonics. "First speaker, I must advise against this. Our studies suggest that external threat causes humans to temporarily overcome their internal divisions. They don't unify permanently, but they become capable of coordinated action while maintaining their psychological diversity. If we attack them directly. But the Council had already decided. The Krylonian Empire had not maintained its power by allowing anomalies to persist. The attack order was given, and the greatest fleet in the galaxy's history was assembled. As the first Krylonian warships emerged from hyperspace near Earth's moon, human monitoring stations picked up the transmission intended to demoralize them. A simple psychometric broadcast explaining the mathematical inevitability of their defeat. Instead, humanity responded with a message of their own. It was broadcast on all frequencies, in all languages, and its simplicity belied its terrible significance. Finally, the Krylonian fleet commanders would soon learn what Six had tried to warn them about. Humanity had spent its entire existence fighting itself, turning its cognitive diversity into an engine of constant innovation. They hadn't needed to prepare for alien invasion. They had been preparing for it automatically, through fiction, through games, through endless speculation and debate. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that humanity's fractured consciousness was a weakness, never realizing that in the vast dark of space, the ability to contain multitudes, to think in contradictions, to thrive in cognitive chaos, wasn't a flaw in humanity's mental architecture. It was an evolutionary advantage they had never encountered before. And now, they would learn why. The war that followed would teach the galaxy that the most dangerous minds in existence weren't the ones that fought in perfect unity, but the ones that could think in 1,000 different ways at once. Humanity was about to demonstrate why psychological diversity wasn't just a defensive trait. It was the ultimate weapon. The price of underestimation. The first wave of Krylonian warships learned about human adaptability the hard way. Their crystalline vessels, designed to channel both physical and psychometric energy, were masterpieces of unified purpose. Each crew operated as a single consciousness, their actions perfectly coordinated through their species' natural psychic resonance. It should have made them invincible. It made them predictable. They're thinking like one mind, General Sarah Chen observed from humanity's hastily assembled Defense Command Center beneath the Himalayas. Every ship in their fleet responds to situations the same way, using the same tactics, making the same decisions. She turned to her diverse command staff, a mix of military leaders from nations that had been enemies mere weeks ago. Let's show them why that's a problem. The human counterattack didn't come from military vessels. Earth didn't have any that could match Krylonian technology. Instead, it came from everywhere else. Civilian shipping vessels performed kamikaze runs. Satellites were transformed into kinetic weapons. Weather monitoring stations became impromptu electromagnetic pulse generators. Each human commander used different tactics, different strategies, different approaches. The Krylonian fleet, for the first time in its history, faced an enemy it couldn't predict. Grand Admiral Ixel watched in horror as his perfect formation began to break apart. Impossible, he transmitted to the fleet consciousness. Their vessels are primitive. Their weapons are inefficient. Their tactics are. He couldn't complete the thought. Their tactics were chaos itself. A fishing trawler off the coast of Japan had somehow turned itself into a quantum field disruptor, using modified deep-sea scanning equipment to interfere with Krylonian psychometric communications. A Brazilian weather satellite had reconfigured itself into a gravitational lens, focusing solar radiation into deadly beams. An Indian tech startup had reprogrammed thousands of maintenance drones to swarm Krylonian ships, not to damage them, but to paint their surfaces with nano-reactive materials that interfered with their crystalline structure. None of these tactics should have worked. Each, examined individually, was laughably primitive. But humanity wasn't attacking with a single strategy. They were attacking with all of them, simultaneously, continuously adapting. The real shock came when the first Krylonian vessel fell. It wasn't destroyed. It was captured. Somehow, A group of human scientists had figured out how to resonate with the crystalline structure of Krylonian technology, not through psychometric manipulation, but through crude physical vibrations. Their learning, Ixel realized with growing dread, not as a species, not as a unified consciousness, but as countless individual nodes of innovation. He watched as humans began to reverse engineer Krylonian technology, not by understanding it, but by finding 1,000 different ways to make it work. The Krylonian command structure, based on perfect consensus and unified thought, couldn't adapt fast enough. Each human success spawned a dozen new approaches. Each failure led to hundreds of modified attempts. It was evolution at a tactical level, driven by humanity's fractured but innovative consciousness. Back on the Krylonian throne world, High Commander 6 received the reports with grim validation. "You see now," she addressed the Psychometric Council. "Their cognitive diversity isn't just a defense against our control. It's an engine of adaptation we cannot match." The Council watched as humans began to modify Krylonian technology in ways that should have been impossible. They weren't improving it. They were changing it fundamentally, creating hybrid systems that worked in ways that defied Krylonian understanding. "They don't try to understand our technology as we do," Six explained. "They don't seek the perfect solution. Instead, they try everything, keeping what works regardless of why it works. Their ships are becoming abominations, beautiful, terrible abominations." The first speaker's crystalline form had grown dark with worry. "Can we not simply overwhelm them with numbers? Surely our production capacity." "They've already begun replicating our technology," Six interrupted. "Not as we do, not through perfect crystalline growth, but through dozens of different manufacturing methods. Some grow crystal ships in vats of engineered bacteria. Others forge them in quantum furnaces. Still others weave them from metamaterials we've never conceived of. They're not just copying our technology, they're evolving it." The implications were staggering. The Krylonian Empire had achieved its dominance through unity of purpose and perfection of method. Humanity was threatening that dominance not through superior technology or military might, but through sheer cognitive diversity and adaptive potential. "We have projected their rate of technological adaptation," Six continued, her harmonic voice resonating with concern. "Within 6 standard months, they will have developed variants of our technology that we cannot counter. Not because they are superior, but because they will be too diverse to predict." The council chamber fell silent. The Empire had encountered and subjugated thousands of species, but never one that turned the Empire's greatest strength, its unity of purpose and method, into a weakness. As if to punctuate Six's warning, a new transmission arrived from the front. Admiral Ixel's fleet consciousness had been shattered, not through psychometric warfare, but through the sheer chaos of trying to predict and counter thousands of different human approaches simultaneously. The crystalline perfection of Krylonian military doctrine had been overwhelmed by humanity's embrace of imperfection and diversity. The price of underestimation was becoming clear. The Empire had judged humanity by its level of technology, not by its capacity for adaptation. They had assumed that humanity's fractured consciousness and diverse approaches were signs of weakness. Instead, they had stumbled upon the species that would teach the galaxy a lesson about the power of cognitive diversity. And the lesson was only beginning. When mercy becomes a weapon. The Krylonian Empire had never encountered an enemy that could weaponize compassion. Their unified consciousness made concepts like mercy and cruelty absolute. Either you destroyed your enemy completely, or you didn't. The idea of selective mercy was as alien to them as their crystalline biology was to humans. This became their third fatal mistake. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her holographic presentation showing the captured Krylonian warrior. Unlike its crystalline brethren, this one's form had begun to show subtle variations in its structure. Traces of individuality emerging from prolonged isolation from the Empire's collective consciousness. "They're not truly a hive mind," she explained. Their psychometric unity is a cultural construct, maintained through constant reinforcement. When isolated, they begin to develop individual characteristics. More importantly, they begin to question. The implications were staggering. Humanity had discovered that the Krylonian Empire's greatest strength, its unified consciousness, was artificially maintained. Like a crystal growing in perfect conditions, it required constant, careful control. The new human strategy was devastatingly simple. Don't break the crystal. Crack it. Across the front lines of the expanding war, human forces began implementing what they called the fractal protocol. When they captured Krylonian soldiers, they didn't try to destroy them or forcibly sever them from their collective consciousness. Instead, they isolated them in small groups, exposed them to human culture, and waited. The results exceeded all expectations. Commander James Chen, son of General Sarah Chen, led the first successful implementation of the protocol. His unit had captured a Krylonian scout ship with its crew intact. Instead of interrogating them or trying to extract military intelligence, he did something unprecedented. He showed them Earth's entertainment. Their consciousness is based on perfect unity, he explained to his skeptical superiors. So let's show them our stories about rebellion, individuality, and personal growth. Let's show them our art, our music, our countless different ways of seeing the universe. The Krylonian crew, at first resistant, began to change. Their crystalline forms started developing unique patterns. Their harmonic communications became less synchronized. They began asking questions that would have been impossible within the Empire's unified consciousness. Why do humans create art that contradicts other art? How can you maintain civilization with so many competing viewpoints? What is the purpose of entertainment that makes you feel sadness? Each question was a crack in the perfect crystal of their conditioning. The breakthrough came when one of the Krylonian officers, designated Crystal Song in Unity, but now calling herself Jazz, requested asylum. Her crystalline form had developed swirling patterns that reflected her growing individuality. The Unity is a prison, she explained to human researchers. We believed it was our nature, but it's a cage built of thought and tradition. You humans, with your beautiful chaos, showed us another way. The defection sent shockwaves through the Krylonian command structure. Their psychometric network, designed to maintain perfect unity, couldn't simply erase the knowledge that one of their own had chosen to leave. The very concept of choice, of individual decision-making, began to infect their collective consciousness. High Commander 6, watching from her command center, recognized the existential threat immediately. They're not defeating us, she reported to an increasingly fragmented council. They're changing us. Every Krylonian exposed to human culture becomes a vector for cognitive diversity. The Empire tried to adapt, issuing orders to destroy any Krylonian troops at risk of capture. But this only accelerated the fracturing. The more the Empire tried to maintain its rigid unity, the more appealing humanity's cognitive freedom became to its soldiers. Some Krylonian ships began to desert, their crews seeking asylum among the humans. Others started developing their own tactical innovations, breaking from the perfect but predictable strategies of the Empire. Each defection, each small act of individual choice, sent ripples through the psychometric network that bound the Empire together. Professor Sarah Mitchell, leading Earth's Senate Psychology Division, summarized the situation in a report that would later be considered a turning point in the war. We're not winning by destroying their unity. We're winning by showing them the beauty of diversity. Every Krylonian who chooses to think independently becomes a testament to the power of individual consciousness. The Empire's response was predictable. They tried to purge the contamination, to restore perfect unity through force. But you cannot unring a bell, and you cannot unmake a choice once the possibility of choice has been discovered. Humanity's greatest weapon turned out to be neither technology nor military might, but the simple, revolutionary idea that consciousness could be both individual and collective, that strength could come from diversity rather than unity. The war entered a new phase, one that the Empire's unified consciousness couldn't comprehend. How do you fight an enemy that turns your captured soldiers not into victims or slaves, but into individuals? How do you maintain perfect unity when every battle creates more evidence that diversity breeds strength? As more Krylonian ships and soldiers defected, bringing with them their advanced technology and growing individual creativity, the Empire faced a choice: adapt or die. But adaptation required the very thing their society had been built to prevent: change. And change, as humanity had learned over its long history, was both a weapon and a gift. The mathematics of terror. The turning point of the war came not from a grand battle or a superweapon, but from a discovery made in a quiet laboratory beneath the Australian outback. Dr. Maya Patel, working with a team of human scientists and Krylonian defectors, had finally decoded the fundamental principles of psychometric physics. It's not about unity versus chaos, she explained to the Joint Species Defense Council, her holographic presentation showing the intricate mathematical models. It's about the relationship between consciousness and reality itself. The Krylonians weren't wrong about psychometric energy. They were just using it in the most limited way possible. The council chamber, now filled with both human leaders and crystalline forms of defected Krylonian commanders, hummed with anticipation. Jazz, the first Krylonian defector, had developed into something entirely new. Her crystalline form now pulsed with patterns that seemed to bridge the gap between human chaos and Krylonian order. The Empire built its power on the principle that unified consciousness creates unified reality. Maya continued, but they never considered the possibility that diverse consciousness could create something far more powerful: multiple realities existing simultaneously. The implications were staggering. Humanity's fractured consciousness, the very thing the Empire had seen as a weakness, allowed them to perceive and interact with multiple quantum states simultaneously. While the Krylonians had mastered the art of forcing reality into a single, perfect pattern, humans had the natural ability to navigate multiple potential realities at once. The first practical application of this discovery changed the nature of warfare forever. Human ships, retrofitted with hybrid psychometric technology, began to exist in multiple states simultaneously. They were both here and there, attacking and defending, present and absent. The Krylonian fleet, bound by their unified consciousness to a single reality, couldn't adapt. Admiral Jessica Chen, daughter of the legendary General Sarah Chen, led the first attack using the new technology. Her fleet seemed to phase in and out of existence, each ship operating on its own quantum frequency, each crew making independent decisions that somehow coordinated into a perfect storm of chaos and precision. The Krylonian response was predictable. They tried to unify their consciousness even more tightly, to enforce a single reality through sheer psychometric force. But this only made them more vulnerable. Their ships, locked into a single quantum state, became easy targets for humanity's reality-shifting vessels. They still don't understand, Jazz observed from her position on the Joint Council. Unity isn't strength, it's stagnation. The universe itself exists in multiple states. By trying to force it into a single pattern, they're fighting against the fundamental nature of reality. The war entered its final phase, but it was unlike any conclusion the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships didn't just defeat Krylonian vessels, they transformed them. Each battle became a lesson in quantum consciousness, each engagement a demonstration of how reality itself responded to diversity of thought. Dr. Patel's team made another breakthrough: the development of what they called consciousness bridges. These devices didn't try to unify different minds, but instead allowed them to interact while maintaining their individuality. When the first human Krylonian hybrid crews began operating these ships, the results were beyond anything either species had imagined. The Empire's leadership watched in horror as their perfect unified reality began to fragment. Their own citizens, exposed to the idea that consciousness could be both individual and connected, started developing their own variations of psychometric technology. Some Krylonian worlds began experimenting with controlled diversity, creating new forms of crystalline growth that incorporated chaos patterns. High Commander 6, who had warned of humanity's potential from the beginning, finally understood the full scope of what was happening. "We thought we were fighting a war for control of reality," she transmitted to what remained of the Council. "Instead, we're witnessing the evolution of consciousness itself." The mathematics of terror, as the humans had dubbed it, wasn't about destruction at all. It was about the fundamental relationship between mind and reality. Humanity hadn't just developed a new form of warfare, they had discovered a new way of existing in the universe. Ships crewed by hybrid teams of humans and individualized Krylonians began exploring the frontiers of what was possible. They could phase through solid matter, communicate across quantum states, and even manipulate the fabric of space-time itself. But unlike the Empire's rigid control of reality, these new capabilities were as diverse as the minds that wielded them. The galaxy watched in awe as human Krylonian hybrid vessels performed maneuvers that defied conventional physics. Each crew developed its own unique approach to reality manipulation, creating a tapestry of techniques that no single consciousness could have conceived. "This isn't just victory," Maya explained to the Council as reports of the Empire's disintegration came in. "This is transcendence. We're not just winning a war. We're showing the galaxy that the next step in evolution isn't perfect unity, but perfect diversity." The mathematics of terror had become the mathematics of transformation, and the universe would never be the same. A new order among the stars. The fall of the Krylonian Empire didn't end with a surrender document or a decisive battle. Instead, it dissolved like a crystal structure exposed to a new form of energy, transforming into something entirely different. As the last remnants of the Empire's unified consciousness fragmented, the galaxy witnessed the birth of something unprecedented in its history. The Quantum Concordat, as it came to be known, emerged from the ashes of war. It wasn't an empire or even a federation. It was something new, a political structure that mirrored the very nature of quantum reality itself, existing in multiple states simultaneously. The first meeting of the Concordat took place in Earth's orbit, aboard a station that embodied the new order. Its crystalline structures, grown using hybrid human Krylonian technology, shifted and flowed like liquid geometry. Representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered, each bringing their own perspective on consciousness and reality. Dr. Maya Patel, now showing signs of age, but her eyes still bright with purpose, addressed the gathered species. "What we learned from this conflict isn't just about warfare or technology. It's about the fundamental nature of existence itself. Unity and diversity aren't opposites. They're complementary states, just like particles and waves in quantum mechanics." The station's central chamber was a marvel of hybrid engineering. Quantum consciousness bridges allowed species with radically different forms of awareness to communicate directly. Former Krylonian worlds, now exploring their own paths of individual development, shared space with human colonies. Each civilization maintained its unique identity while participating in a larger network of shared experience. Jazz, her crystalline form now a rainbow of shifting patterns, had become something of a living symbol for this new era. "We thought consciousness was like a crystal, perfect, unchanging, unified," she explained to a group of young diplomats from various species. "Instead, we learned it's more like a garden, diverse, growing, interconnected but individual." The technological revolution that followed transformed the galaxy. Ships powered by hybrid psychometric engines navigated through multiple quantum states, making faster-than-light travel seem primitive by comparison. Colonies developed their own unique variations of consciousness technology, each adding to the growing tapestry of possibility. But perhaps the most profound change was cultural. Species that had once sought to emulate the Krylonian Empire's perfect unity now embraced their own forms of cognitive diversity. The galaxy learned that strength didn't come from enforcing a single pattern, but from allowing countless patterns to coexist and interact. High Commander 6, who had first recognized humanity's potential, found herself in a new role as one of the architects of this transformation. "We thought we were teaching the galaxy how to think," she reflected during a quiet moment in her crystalline garden on Earth. "Instead, Humanity taught us how to imagine. The human contribution to this new order wasn't leadership in the traditional sense. Instead, they became facilitators of diversity, experts in helping different forms of consciousness find ways to interact and grow. Earth's universities became centers for studying what they called xenocognitive dynamics, the art and science of understanding how different species think and perceive reality. Admiral Chen's daughter, now a professor at the newly established Quantum Consciousness Institute, summarized it best in her inaugural lecture. The true power of humanity wasn't our ability to fight or adapt. It was our ability to embrace contradiction, to hold multiple truths simultaneously, to find strength in our cognitive diversity. We didn't win the war by becoming stronger than the Empire. We won by showing the galaxy a better way to exist. The ancient species of the galaxy, who had watched the conflict from afar, began to emerge from their isolation. They had seen empires rise and fall, but this was different. The Quantum Concordat wasn't trying to impose a single order on the galaxy. It was creating a framework where infinite orders could coexist. As decades passed, the war that had taught the galaxy to fear humanity's name became known for something else entirely. It was remembered not as a triumph of military might, but as the moment when the galaxy learned that the next step in cosmic evolution wasn't about achieving perfect unity or embracing total chaos. It was about finding harmony in diversity, strength in contradiction, and beauty in the endless variations of consciousness itself. The crystalline ships that now navigated between the stars were no longer weapons of war, but vessels of exploration and exchange. Each one was unique, its crew a mixture of species and consciousness types, its very structure a testament to the principle that had transformed the galaxy, that the greatest power in the universe wasn't in forcing reality to conform to a single pattern, but in allowing it to exist in all its infinite variations. And humanity, the species that had once been dismissed as primitive and fractured, found its true place in the cosmic order, not as conquerors or rulers, but as pioneers of possibility, teachers of transformation, and living proof that the path to the stars wasn't through unity of purpose, but through diversity of thought. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's name, but it had learned to love humanity's gift, the understanding that in the vast cosmic dance of consciousness and reality, there was room for every kind of mind, every form of thought, every pattern of being. The war was over. The revolution of consciousness had begun.